Good morning, All Souls community. Tommy Bello here. And this week we've been talking about playing the long game. It's this idea that even though the here and now may seem really chaotic, really full of suffering, really just maddening, the here and now, or the short game we've been calling it, is not where God calls our attention to. He calls us to trust Him, trust in His promises, trust in His word, and to play the long game. To trust that God's plan and His process is bigger, more profound, and it will achieve His purposes in the long game. And so today's daily devotion, I want to start off with a question. And that question is this: have you ever had a moment in your life where you put your foot in your mouth? Have you ever had a moment in your life where you said or did something that really made the situation worse? I've worked in pharmacy retail for 10 years, and I can't tell you how many times I would be having an interaction with a customer, and then I said something, and it came out the wrong way, or it just wasn't the right thing to say. And man, did it make the situation worse. I really put my foot in my mouth. We probably don't have to think very hard to come up with a couple of moments like that for us. In Acts 16, the Apostle Paul has one of those moments. He's on his way to a prayer meeting, Scripture tells us, and there's a female slave that starts following him around. Now, the interesting thing about this female slave is that she has a spirit in her that allows her to predict the future. As the story goes on, this female slave follows Paul and his associate Silas for many days. And she's following them as she keeps crying out loud, "These are servants of the Most High God. They have come to tell us how we can be saved." Which is true. They are servants of the Most High God, and they are coming to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as the story goes, after so many days, Paul gets annoyed with her. Yeah, annoyed with her, and he casts the spirit out of her. Which, I don't know how you feel about that, but Paul's something else, man. But that's a foot in his mouth moment. That gets him into hot water. You see, that female slave was used by her masters as a pretty lucrative source of income. You know, come pay 5 denarii, 10 denarii, whatever it may have been, and come have your future predicted by our female slave. Well, when Paul cast out the spirit, there goes the cash flow. And so they actually find Paul and Silas, her masters. They find Paul and Silas. They have him dragged out of the marketplace into the town court to be brought in front of the authorities, in front of the magistrates, and they lodge a formal complaint against them. You messed with our income by casting out that spirit. Well, Paul and Silas lose that court appearance. They get flogged, they get thrown in jail, and the head jailer gets specific instructions. Keep a watchful eye over these two, kind of giving you the sense that they view them as troublemakers. Now, I don't know what Paul and Silas may have thought in that moment, but at least from the outside, this is definitely a foot in the mouth moment. They really stepped in it. They really made a situation worse. I mean, they were in this town to preach the gospel, to bring the good news of Jesus Christ forth, and they kind of got in their own way doing that. They ended up in jail. I mean, that, at least again from the outside, looks like that would impede the process that they came here to do. Well, as the story goes on, that night, Paul and Silas are actually singing and praising hymns to God, so they're in good spirits. And there's an earthquake that happens, and the earthquake shakes the foundations of the prison. It opens the doors of all the prisons, of the prison rooms, excuse me. The jailer, being awoken from this earthquake, lights some torches, sees that all the prison doors are open, and pulls out his sword. He's going to commit suicide, which seems like a really drastic response, but he would rather do that than deal with the punishment and the torture his masters would inflict on him for being responsible, even though he wasn't, for the prisoners escaping. But none of the prisoners actually left. Paul calls out to the guard before he can hurt himself. No, don't harm yourself. We're actually all still here. And the jailer, realizing that, goes to Paul and he says, "Sir, what must I do to be saved?" You know, maybe he heard from just around town. Maybe he heard the story of the female slave following them for many days, that Paul and Silas were here to tell people about how we can be saved. However it gets in him, the jailer has this moment, has this realization, wow, this guy's something else. This guy's got something going on that I don't. I needed to ask him how we can be saved. What starts as a foot in the mouth moment for Paul, God turns around and turns into this opportunity for Paul to preach the gospel. Scripture tells us that jailer gets saved, accepts the truth of Jesus Christ, and so does his household. So prison didn't impede the process, did not stop the long game. And that's really the takeaway for this morning's daily devotional. No matter how many moments we can remember where we stepped in it, where we put our foot in our mouths, where we made a situation worse, even if we actually did make a situation worse, our failures, our mistakes do not impede, do not stop the long game. And I'll say that again for you. No matter how many times we fail, no matter how many mistakes we make, they do not impede or stop the long game. They don't interrupt, they don't stop God's long game, God's process. And take courage in that. That God's purposes will be achieved by God's strength. Man, how cool is it to think that Paul's failure, his just moment of acting out of a flash of emotion, turns into an opportunity for him to preach the gospel to a man and get him and his household saved. Can we look at our failures and mistakes as that? That, yeah, we messed up. We can own that. But can we also turn around and look at them as, God, would you use this as an opportunity, a moment for the gospel to be preached? Would you actually use this for your long game? Would you reflect on that thought today, friends? Would our failures and mistakes, one, again, realize they don't stop or impede God's long game, but could they actually be used by God for the long game?